Rose Hill Cemetery is really, really beautiful early in the morning. I was up early before the crack of dawn this morning doing some juju, whatever that means. So, I've been reading a book called Meeting the Shadow: The Hidden Power of the Dark Side of Human Nature. And it sparked this topic that I'm going to be talking about today: meeting the dark side in spiritual practice. As the more experienced spiritual practitioners can confirm, the spiritual quest is quite dangerous. Um, it's definitely not all love, light, and roses, as I've discussed in my other videos. And this path is not just for anybody. So the discussion that I'm going to be having today is specifically for those who have chosen this path. Um, as a lot of you already know, or maybe finding out, or have not yet found out, you really have to put your hand to the plow if this is the path that you have chosen for yourself. There's a lot of suffering and loss in spiritual evolution. And that's what I'm going to be hitting on today. I don't think that it's discussed enough. Now, I'm not saying the spiritual path is all dark or negative, but this is what I'm going to be discussing today. As you get on YouTube, on the social network, the spiritual landscape is filled with spiritual influencers. They're validation loops. Most of them are validation loops and quick fix enlightenment. Surface level practitioners who are caught up in the echo chamber, chasing likes just for dopamine. They're only interested in selling the pretty picture of spirituality and not interested in the dirty work that comes with it, or the darkness that comes with it. Um, like I said, the spiritual conquest or the spiritual path is very hard, and it's definitely not all about prancing around on a spiritual resort on some exotic beach, holding hands with people, singing "Kumbaya." Um, the spiritual path requires you to get your hands dirty. You have to get in the trenches. You have to go to dark places that's far from an exotic spiritual resort. Okay. Um, Enlightenment is not just a euphoric phase for a spiritual practitioner. Enlightenment is just the beginning. Yeshua was even referred to as the man of sorrows. And to me, that doesn't sound too alluring. I mean, it just doesn't, but it's the truth. Like I said, the spiritual path, there is a lot of loss and suffering. So, on walking this path, you will be confronted with darkness at some point, in and outside of you. This is an axiom. It can also be quite dangerous, very, very dangerous. Um, in this realm, we don't fight against, as I stated before, we don't fight against flesh and blood. Well, we do in a way, but we don't fight against flesh and blood, but principalities of powers in the spiritual realm, both light and dark. And this is why this path can be quite dangerous. Therefore, practitioners must prepare themselves to deal with the dark underside of life. This darkness can take on many, many forms. In religion, they personify this in images of devils and dark, angry gods. Buddha, Christ, Mohammed, and virtually every other Messiah figure report dealing with the temptations of the evil one. An example, remember when Yeshua spent 40 days and 40 nights in the wilderness, led by the Holy Spirit to fast and to be tempted by the devil? So religions have various names, have came up with various names from antiquity over the centuries and over the years. We have Mara, we have Satan, we have Iblis. So this repeating story of temptation or meeting with this dark force is more than just another hero beats the dark side myth. You also find this in the hero's journey. It is a description of a specific peril of choosing to take the spiritual path. In Christianity and among the Sufi mystics, it is experienced on a more personal level as the obstinate pride and trickery of the ego and the dark night of the soul. For us, modern practitioners, I believe the dark nature is even more multifaceted. The modern world we live in is more complicated and has many, many evil faces. So dealing with this darkness has never been more difficult as it has been, I do believe, than now. So, I mean, if you look around, it's everywhere. We are completely saturated in it, immersed in it, from social media, the news, TV, in our own family groups, and even our own churches. No one growing up in this world escapes being conditioned by this violence, this evil. We are no doubt surrounded inside and out by this evil and suffering of all kinds. No doubt that when you choose the spiritual path in doing meditation and in contemplation, this dark side within us is washed to the surface of consciousness by the purifying and energizing effect of these spiritual exercises. The ability to deal with these emerging powerful dark impulses is a basic skill which must be mastered by every practitioner, or you will fall. So moral, ethical, and spiritual integrity is required, but practical gnosis is required to be able to deal with this. So without study, without experience or conception of this darkness, tends toward having a primitive or naive mindset about what it is that we're actually dealing with. If we attempt to dabble on the spiritual journey with this primitive mindset, we are quickly paralyzed. Instead, we must gather reliable information. We must read books. We must gain experience, observe and analyze our own personal psychology. And in time, we develop a more complete picture of the nature of this dark force. An educated, experienced, and mature attitude toward this evil is a necessity if you are on this path or if you're a spiritual practitioner. So, with careful analysis, characteristics of the so-called dark side become more obvious. Yes, as I stated in my last video, there are definitely dark forces working behind the scenes, but this particular darkness that I'm referring to here is not really a side or a shadow or a persona. It is a tangled web of complex forces, programs, and effects which we repress from ordinary consciousness so that we rarely see its true nature. This darkness that rises up in spiritual exercises to torment and tempt this darkness will rise up in spiritual exercises to torment and tempt the practitioner. I believe that this is his or her personal devil, the void within, the private hell that must be confronted and transformed, lest it block the path of the mystic or the practitioner. All in all, every practitioner must face by themselves their own personal darkness or evil. I do believe that this is a rite of passage or initiation phase that every true practitioner must go through. To go into more depth about this darkness that arises when doing meditation or spiritual exercises, repressed dark material will arise for the practitioner. It is likely to the experience of it are likely to be frightening visions, feelings of terror, of rage, uncontrollable ego reactions, and other terrible manifestations. These reactions must be expected and promptly dealt with. They should not be blown out of proportion. You should not be afraid of them. It should not be minimized or avoided. Instead, it should be observed that these eruptions of the dark side can be of great benefit for one's self development, ultimately transforming these frightening experiences into usable psychic energy to turn lead into gold, alchemically speaking. This will require every bit of skillful means the practitioner possesses. Sometimes when one's dark side erupts to the surface, our first reaction is guilt and shame. To identify with that, to identify with the shadow, feeling as though one has been exposed as pure evil. The goal of each practitioner is to heal this evil illness within them and bring the injured area back into full operation. The modern spiritual mystic must apply treatment to his own dark nature. Wallowing in guilt and shame will simply do no good. So, in healing this illness, this dark nature, vast amounts of personal power and ability can be reclaimed. For much of our ordinary powers as human beings are crippled by this darkness within us. These crippled parts within us represent vast resources of contaminated and stagnant psychic energy. As each practitioner progresses on their path, every encounter with evil is an opportunity to grow stronger. The repressed personal demons we each have grow stronger until one eventually confronts it, and eventually one can break through to the Christ within. This process of healing transformation can be very complicated. For a lot of the darkness within us was written into the psyche during our childhood, especially those with very traumatic childhoods. And reasoning or trying to reason with this darkness almost has no effect. But if we are consistent and conscious, rituals, purification regimens, special meditative exercises, practicing mindfulness, and grounding exercises can be of extraordinary benefit when used in the right time and place. The energy of the dark side must be frequently released and expressed, and it should be done consciously. Done through art, or you could do it through rituals, so you could prevent an excess of psychic energy that might harm family or even close friends. If one is consistent with this, the biological, cultural, and personal dark sides can become integrated into the psyche where they function smoothly, fulfilling their dark side purposes. The darkness that every practitioner will encounter is not the enemy. It is the forgotten part of the divine trying to return home. When the practitioner has the courage to actually face it, to stand firm as the old fears, addictions, or egoic patterns arise, they are not falling backwards. They are transmuting. They are purifying. They are reclaiming the power that was long exiled to the unconscious. True mastery of the spiritual path is not found in escaping darkness, but in walking through it with faith, with humility, and unwavering integrity. It is in those moments when we feel furthest from the light that we are actually closest to revelation. For the veil between the human and the divine thins in the depths of suffering. So, to the practitioner who dares to walk this path, when your shadow arises, don't flee. When the mind trembles, stay rooted, stay grounded. When guilt whispers or shame knocks, forgive yourself. For this descent into darkness is not your undoing, it is your initiation. The path of the mystic has always been a crucifixion before resurrection, a night before dawn, a fall before flight. And if you persist with patience, compassion, and reverence, you will come to see that the dark side you feared was never separate from you. It was always your teacher, waiting to be embraced. Only when we can integrate the shadow can we embody the wholeness of light. Only when we have met our demons can we become truly divine. And the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. John 1, verse 5.